Yes, yes, I think we probably outnumber, or probably will outnumber the audience by 2-1, but... Hello, hi. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Are we, shall we begin? Vincent is over there, I think. Vincent? Yeah. He's not on for a while, so
Se Marianne e Vincent vengono, iniziamo. È lì nella...
Vincent.
Vincent? Ok.
Nous sommes pleins. What do you reckon? I think. Oh, it could be, yes, absolutely. So shall we? Yeah, yeah.
Where is the seat for Marianne?
Shall we? Shall we start? Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen on the panel as well, if I may have your attention, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen on the panel, if I may have your attention as well, thank you very much, thank you. And thank you to our live stream audience who are watching, I know, around the world for our IEMA members as well. Hello and good evening, and welcome to this incredibly important session to talk about skills training at a regional and local level. And we are delighted to be partnering with CEMR, and I'll introduce their Director General, Fabrizio Rossi, in a moment. But it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this session here at Sharm el-Sheikh in COP27. We have a wide range of speakers and a really interesting discussion ahead. But without further ado, I'll hand over to my co-facilitator, Fabrizio.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It is indeed a great pleasure to teaming up with IEMA for this session. Thank you very much, Sarah Mukherjee, Chief Executive Officer of IEMA, for all the great cooperation we had so far for the preparation of this session. Indeed, it is a very interesting session. You see, we have with us a very large and interesting panel. The topic of the session is capacity building on green skills to improve local, regional climate policies. From the CEMR, what I could say is, well, first of all, let's get clear about this acronym. CEMR stands for Council of European Municipalities and Regions. And I could say that we in our community, we are well aware of the need really to build new skills at local level in cities and local governments to address the climate challenges ahead of us. Interesting enough, human nature is it's funny sometimes. The more complex is the problem ahead of us, the more we have the tendency to compartmentalize the answers. And this is what happened in the last 20 years. We have seen the proliferation of units, departments, sections, ministers, and then we are realizing now that actually to address climate change, we really need systemic, holistic approaches, breaking silos, changing the way we work, and of course, building new skills at the local level. This is my brief introduction to the session. Sarah, would you like to add any few reflections from your side?
Thank you so much. Well, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment is the global organization for environment and sustainability professionals. And for us, skills, training and education are absolutely vital. There's a lot of talk going on here about a green world and a global green economy. But without the skills, without the training and without the education, there will be no green economy because we won't have those skills available in order to make that happen. These skills are not just for the office workers and the latte drinking classes, but they are for technicians, for engineers, for people who are doing first and secondary jobs within the economy and are absolutely vital if we are to get where we need to go in terms of a very fast-moving agenda now to get to net zero by 2040 or 2050. So this is what we'll be talking a little bit about and how skills and training can support regional and local economies. And I'm delighted to hand over to our first speaker, L.Takeh from Deloitte, who'll be talking a little bit about the work that we've done in cooperation with Deloitte. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. So, as Sarah said, we've been working together recently to co-author a report and a toolkit to really move organisations forward in how they strategically think about the workforce transformation that is needed. There's been a huge amount of really valuable content shared throughout the last 2 weeks on jobs and skills, and really great examples of initiatives that organisations and different countries are doing locally. But one of the things that we found when we were doing our research is there was a lack of a shared language, a lack of a structure to help organisations think through in a strategic way how they move forwards, so that it's not just a one-off action, but is an action that is continued and maintained. Because we all know that as human beings, learning doesn't happen in one moment in time. So the toolkit that we produced uses 2 dimensions. It looks at different types of green topics and the different indicators of how an organisation knows if they're mature or not. It also looks at different functional roles within an organisation to know if, for instance, the finance team has everything they need or the IT team has everything they need. And finally, just to highlight, on the screen behind me, you'll be able to download these things, including a blueprint for different types of job families. So we felt very strongly we wanted to open source this material so everyone could benefit. We are also very keen to take it to other parts of the world. So hopefully between now and COP28, we will be working on a Middle East version of some of the materials and examples in that report.
Laila, thanks so much. And before we hear from our next speaker, I wonder if I could perhaps ask my side and then hand over to Fabrizio for your side. Just some headline thoughts, just maybe a minute from our speakers about what your aspirations for COP is or your takeaways. Vincent, perhaps you'd start us off.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me despite the sound of Climate Station. As you may know, 2023 is going to be the European Year of Skills in the European Union. President Ursula von der Leyen announced it in her State of the Union speech. So of course we have to make it a year of the European green skills. And there is no real need to convince policymakers, but there is a need to talk to the public. We talk about retrofitting buildings, we talk about retrofitting cars, but to some extent we have to reskill. I would not say retrofit, but we have to reskill a lot of workers concerning the transition that we're going to have. So there is a huge challenge to come. One of the challenges being also that in some country there is a lack of employees. There is even for unskilled workers full sectors who do not make it to recruit people. So in this context where it's really uncertain with the also inflation looming, the investment in people, that is investing in skill, which is investing over the long term in people, has a risk to be put into the background to foster and to make more and invest more on shorter priorities like the energy crisis and fighting poverty linked to inflation. So I'm going to be sure to leave the time to our fellow members, but at the European Committee of the Regions, the assembly of local and regional politicians that I represent as mayor of Autun in France, and the Renew Group, the Liberal Democratic Group. We do believe, of course, that the local level, depending on every country, because each system is different, has a true role to play in that direction.
Lovely, thank you, Vincent. Thank you very much indeed. Kemi, just as an opening thought, what are your takeaways or aspirations?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so I would say it straight. For me, I would think African leaders should sing a new song, a new rhythm. They should focus using this unique opportunity for a combined vision towards adjusting to the current and future impacts and effects of climate change, particularly leveraging on the core benefits from custom-made strategies for the region, that is by tackling its basic societal challenges, through implementation, evaluation, monitoring of targets and indicators of SDG 8 and SDG 9. Importantly, decent work on economic growth, innovation, infrastructure, industry. This will drive the basic, economic need of the society. And of course, indeed, it's a safeguard for its strong entrepreneurship and venturesome young population. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kemi. Professor Ali, what are your thoughts to begin with?
Thank you very much, Sarah. First of all, I think I'm really impressed with the amount and shape of this awareness that most of the international leaders and locally here from Egypt, our policymakers are really engaged very much in this event. This was really something that I value so much. The other thing is I really hope and to see Africa champion the way to renewable energy, because we have a lot of resources. But again, as our colleagues mentioned, that investing in people is really very important, and the transfer of technology, not just giving money for the vulnerable people or for developing countries, but also help them build their own capacity to solve their own problems. And I look forward to commitments to cut not only for carbon dioxide, but for methane in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Laila, some first takeaways and hopes and thoughts, perhaps.
So COP, for me, we're very close to the final drafting being approved, and there are questions for me over how effective it has been. There's lots of debates, as there always are. But the thing that I draw optimism from is the number of actions that the non-state actors are actually making happen and sharing and learning from each other. And I think that's the same in the skills space. So I heard any number of examples of organisations and individuals really progressing their agenda in this space. So I hope that continues.
Thank you so much. And I'll hand over to my co-facilitator for your side of the table.
Let's go with our guest sitting at my right hand. So our long-awaited COP27 is now coming to an end. What are your takeaways, Ronan?
Maybe it's a little bit early. We don't have the text. But maybe 2-3 things. First, I agree that there is a dynamic. A lot of actions are on the table. I have done 15 COP, and maybe it's the COP with the most number of participants, around 40,000. It is a clear signal. It's a big commercial fair now, and it's a dynamic. This is a positive point. So a lot of action, a lot of exchange. But after, we know that this COP is the start of a new process. And this new process is to have a new balance in the finance between the old developed country, the country Annex 1, and the other rich country, who are not Annex 1, as China, as Arabic countries. And we see that they start to discuss what will be the new balance to finance this transition, for example, this transition in Africa. Clearly, at this moment, the money on the table is not enough. We need more money, it's clear. We have just around 80 billion for the climate fund, not green fund, but climate fund. The promise in Copenhagen, you know, it was 100, it's just 80, few billions for adaptation fund, loss and damage, we'll see, is not enough. Just for energy transition in Africa, we need around 200 billion euros by year. It's not enough, but the discussion, I think, start here to see how it will be possible to find this money tomorrow. Innovative finance, it's a part of the last report of climate change. Compensation fund, for example, is growing very fast. We have to see that, of course, subsidies, but it is just a start. Clearly, the Annex 1 said now to China, for example, we have to pay 2 because you emit a lot of emission, and some country as China said, okay, but you have not paid after Copenhagen. And it is just the start, and I think the deal, I hope that the deal will be fine next year for the COP28.
Thank you very much, Ronan. There is still room for hope. Marianne, this is an icebreaker question, so just 30 seconds, please. Just main takeaways or expectations.
Thank you. There are a few places in the world where you have inspiration overload, and this is it. I feel that I have been so excited by so many ideas that I really want to get home and get them all started straight away. And yes, we do need funding, and the funding that was promised was not delivered. We do need that put in place. But actually, our biggest resource is yourselves. Those of us here are the ones that will really change the world, starting at home, in our own patches. then working with our local councils to bring a bit more resources to it, then working nationally and internationally. But it's working together that we need to resolve these really big problems that we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Clifford, please.
Yes, this is my first COP, and I hope it won't be the last. To be honest, it made me believe more in myself and ourselves as youths, as the creative force which can be innovative and help together with the local participation in order to make the change needed for a better world. And I hope that this message out there is spread as much as possible from all the participants who were here at the COP27, and it won't be just another event every year, but the real results are felt, and at the end of the day, we reach our goals. Thank you.
Thank you for this message of hope, Clifford. Sarah, shall I let you introduce our first speaker?
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Yes, and we have COP babies, COP great aunts, COP great uncles, elder statesmen here. I think inspiration overload is a phrase that we're all going to take and steal, I'm afraid, Marianne, because that is a beautiful way of putting it. So we've given you some thoughts about the overall thrust of COP27. Let's now talk about the subject of skills and training, so vital and so important. And I'd like to hand over to Romain Dantec, our senator and the lead for CEMR on climate and president of the Climate Chance Association.
Okay. My speech, my focus will be the question of finance. I complete my first intervention. I think that we are on the table, and for CEMR, I think it's a very important question. It is this question in Europe to mobilize finance at the good level. We have the tool. We know what we have to do. It's clear now. We have renewable energy. We have technique for retrofit for the building. We know that we have to do. But we have not the finance at this level. I absolutely agree. It was your introduction that this question of green worker to have cluster, to have training, it's absolutely crucial. It's a very important point. I underline this point too. It's a question, for example, in France, we are discussing actually a new law to develop a renewable energy. It's clear that we can have the law, but if we have not a worker to install a photovoltaic panel, we have not the solution. But about finance, if we consider that climate change is one of the big problems, not the only problem, of course, we have war in Europe, we know that. But if we consider that for the future of our society, climate change, it's a very, very crucial point, we need to have an economy with a kind of war economy, because we have not a lot of time. We have to develop very fast actions, develop renewable, retrofit thousands and thousands of buildings. It's a kind of war economy. When you are in a war, you do deficit. For example, during the Second World War, in France, the public deficit of the budget was around 40–45%. It is a war economy. I think we are a big problem in Europe, that we are, in French, the word, it's injonction contradictoire. We are a strong contradiction between the idea that we have to go very fast to decrease CO2 emission and the Fit for 55. It's a very ambitious program. It's not so easy to decrease 55% of our emission before 2030, or maybe 57 after the last speech of Timmermans here. For this, we need a lot of money. But in the same time, we have always this idea that there is a financial orthodoxy, the famous 3%, and there is a big contradiction. And as we have no political consensus in Europe about this 3%, we had the consensus for the COVID crisis. During the COVID crisis, it depends a lot. But for climate, we have not decided to use the money, and we have a lot of money, to do deficit and to go faster. I think that our political responsibility, CEMR, it's a political organization of local government, we have to put this question on the table. We need money, maybe we need more loans than subsidies, but with very, very low interest rate, of course. And with this money, it's possible to go faster. With this question of worker, this is a real question, and we need training, we need cluster, but we have to discuss with the European Commission and with the country to cap more money, to create debt, and we know that about this debt, there is a return of investment because we decrease our running cost for energy, for example. For me, it is the most important point today, and I don't know if it's a kind of taboo, but we don't organize the political debate about this point today. And for me, this point can be put on the table by CMR and other network, because as we know all, it's locally that we have capacity to decrease CO2 emission to change daily life. But for this, we need more money, we need money for retrofit, we need money for mobility. Well, we need this money, and the deficit, I think, is the only solution.
Thank you so much, merci bien, for those really interesting thoughts. We'll go to some questions in a minute, so have those ready. I mean, my question, I have to say, is I'd like to ask our audience and our other panelists, are we on a war footing? And if we are, should we be spending appropriately? But before we do that, Professor Ali Hassan, thank you so much for joining us from AinShams University, and we'd be very grateful to hear your thoughts. I believe you have some slides. Yeah. You'll be going to the lectern. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. What I'll try to do this evening is to share with you some quick overview of the links and roles that the higher education plays in the fight against climate change. Of course, we all know that education has always been there and is currently also in the front line of the fight against climate change and other challenges that face our environment and our Earth. But today, I'll just focus also on the local and regional roles that our universities will do. Next, please. Next, please. No, the one before. We all know that every economy depends on education system to generate the human capacity that is responsible for its own sustainable growth. But with the transition that we have from linear economy to circular and green economy, higher education should adapt fast and lead the way in combating climate change and other challenges, given the fact that the world is urgently in need for more educated and green-skilled human capital in all sectors and job families of the decarbonized economy. And also knowing the fact that climate change innovation is almost exclusively carried out and accomplished by people with advanced degrees. So, with this in mind, higher education needs to go into a transformative change. Through this change, we need actually ourselves in universities, for example, to go into a change of what we think, and how we act. We also need a holistic, multidisciplinary, and transformational education that addresses learning content and outcomes, pedagogy, and the learning environment as a whole. We also need to shift from education to learning to foster the development of climate change and sustainability competencies and harness the target skills sets. Universities, in particular, play a pivotal and significant role in addressing every aspect of environmental change and other, including, of course, climate change, through their main three functions. And again, here I'm talking about the functions and principles of universities in the local level. Because again, through the years, we had, for example, in Egypt, since we are in Egypt, we had very few universities in Cairo because it's the capital. But through the years, currently we have over 67 universities all over the country, and some of those universities are specialized in solving the problems or enhancing the resources within which it functions. So, for example, we have some colleges and universities dedicated for oil and gas, for example, others for marine biology, marine resources, and others for geological heritage, and also some for heritage. So for each location, depending on its own resources and own needs and potentials, universities are working locally and integratedly under the umbrella of the ministry requirement. So the three main functions of our universities in Egypt is education, of course, graduate and postgraduate, scientific research and innovation, and recently we added in the hierarchy of the administration of universities a third pool of function, that is community and environmental services. And based on that, the hierarchy of the presidency of the university had the university president, and under him three vice presidents working on students, on research and development and graduate studies, as well as one specifically function for community and environmental services. Next, please. So through these three functions, universities work to help the environment and fight climate change. The first function, for education, we introduce new curricula and programs targeting national, regional, and international priority sectors. But of course, the bureaucracy of developing new curricula and gets the approvals takes time. So we don't stop there and we don't wait. But in the meantime, we integrate climate change competencies and sustainability skills into already functioning curricula. And we put an eye and watch for greenwashing in education. Thirdly, and most importantly, we work with our own staff. We need to develop our staff and upskill them because the world is changing fast. And all university scholars and staff need to be ahead of what is happening. So we also work to upskill ourselves and prepare the newcomers, the new staff, the new members, so they are prepared for the change ahead. And here, let me also iterate when I'm talking about the introduction of new curricula on the international levels. We at EnShams University, we're teaming up with AIMA, and we finally got our corporate membership as the first faculty in Egypt and in the region to be a member. And we're also cooperating with them to develop 3 new programs on the master's level. One on specifically on climate change, the other one is on environmental consultancy, and the third one on sustainability. So I also thank Aima and Sarah for their help in this regard. Next, please. For science, scientific research and innovation, we design strategic targeted research tracks that generate new knowledge and foster practical and cost-effective solutions for policy, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. We avail our research findings and data to decision makers and all our stakeholders to push and prepare for science and evidence-based decisions on the government and decision makers levels. We also create partnerships and cooperation with the R&D sections of our stakeholders, specifically government, industry and businesses, so we streamline our effort and focus on the most significant issues that will help locally, regionally, and again, if we can help on the international level through cooperation that we have with different universities in the US, in Germany, in the UK, and others. Next, please. Finally, the third function of our university is to provide community and environmental services. So we assist governments, businesses, and industries through different types and different models of cooperation. Either we work with them as consultants, or sometimes they hire some university professors to work as advisors for them or to manage some projects with them. And we also work with them to develop new policies and regulations that take us to the transition to low carbon economy. We also raise climate change and sustainability awareness at all organizational levels for public and private entities, for NGOs, and for the public through our efforts in seminars, workshops, courses, and also we work closely with ministries. We work also closely with NGOs and run several projects on the ground to showcase how to actually transfer into green energy and renewable energy. And we started by ourselves in the university, and we having several projects. One of them working with my student to actually calculate the carbon footprint of our faculty and try to develop a strategy to be maybe the first faculty, not a university as a whole, to go into green energy and to reduce our footprint.
Just a couple more minutes, please, Professor. Thank you.
Just one sentence. We also work hard to design courses to develop skills required for specific priority actions, not, again, as I mentioned, not to wait for developing the new curricula, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor. So I'll hand back over to Fabrizio for our Q&A.
Yes. Is there any burning question for our speakers, or perhaps you prefer to keep it for later? Do not be shy, of course. If there is any question, do not hesitate to raise your hand, and we will ask our colleagues to bring you the mic. Yes,
Harry,
please.
thank you.
you.
Thanks, Harry.
Just over there. Thank you, Eva.
Basal here. Good evening, everybody, and thanks very much indeed for the presentations. What crosses my mind is I'm working in the environmental sector as well. And for many years, health and safety, for example, was looked upon as being the purvey of the health and safety team. And it took many years for people to understand that actually everybody is responsible for health and safety. Now we're in an environment where climate action and sustainability is perceived, perhaps incorrectly, to be the purvey of people that are coming out of university with degrees in climate action and sustainability or environmental impact, etc. What's really important, I think, is for all the various different career paths to understand that regardless of what your discipline is, regardless of what your training is, you've got a critical role to play in the fight against climate change. And also, obviously, the issues with biodiversity collapse as well. Those two, I think, need to be in the same sentence, always. So I was just wondering if the panel had any comments on that, but how do we move the needle, as it were, for people to understand, regardless of whether you're a lawyer or an accountant or an economist, that you have a key role to play in environment and sustainability and climate action as much as somebody that has a specific environmental qualification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to thank you personally for mentioning this missing biodiversity dimension, which is absolutely important. Thank you. Is there anyone? Yeah, Professor Ali, please.
Yes. Thank you, Harry. This is very important, actually, and I can share our experience at my Faculty of Graduate Studies and Environmental Research at AinShams University. We have 7 departments spanning all social and science fields. When students come, we set them, all disciplines, we set them together in the same classroom. And we work with them through the whole spectrum of environmental science and sustainability, regardless of their own specialization. Whether you're a lawyer, you're economist, agricultural scientist, a medical doctor, or people of social science, they all sit together and listen to professors, all of them saying the environmental aspects and sustainability relations for each discipline. So they all sit down for a month and a half, preparing them and giving them the base that they should all be aware, and then after that, each one go to his own department. But again, because we're working in the environmental field, we also take note like environmental agriculture, environmental economics, environmental law, environmental management. Even we have environmental psychology and so forth. So I think this is one example that you have to have your own field of expertise. You have to have it. We cannot take that from you. But in the meantime, you have to embed and integrate the sustainability thoughts, principles, and actions into doing that. Thank you.
I'll just...
Use this.
I'll build on that with examples from people already in work. So that's a really good example if people are going through the education process alongside working or not working. But actually there's lots of people, as we know, who are already in work today and need to shift their behaviours, their knowledge and their skills forward to help us all achieve the ambitions that we're all here today talking about. There are examples where organisations have done this in a very transparent way. So everyone being taught, like Deloitte, we have compulsory e-learning around climate and sustainability for all of our staff across the globe. But there are also ways of doing this in initiatives that integrate into the business performance metrics that people have to use day to day, because not everyone is impassioned to learn about these topics, and we need to find ways to get it into business language, into business metrics. And so there are initiatives out there. We spoke to a number of different organizations during doing the report where they are connecting business performance, business opportunity with sustainability performance and sustainability opportunity. And by bringing the language and those benefits together, it means it sticks, and it means it is something that is more pervasive in an organization.
Thank you very much, Laila. Ronan, do you wish to complete?
Yeah, just one point about biodiversity, and of course, the crash of biodiversity, it's a big problem too. About climate, of course, we try to reach the stabilization of the climate. There is two solutions. We decrease CO2 emission, or we increase the capacity of captation, forest, savanna, ocean. And maybe we have some opportunity at this moment with some strategy of company, of territories, who want to present a neutral trajectory, to cap money, the money of compensation, and to use this money for reconquest biodiversity. I think it's a real opportunity for biodiversity. It's not enough, it's sure, to stabilize climate, but it's a real possibility for ambitious program for biodiversity, because biodiversity at the end, it's less expensive than all the transformation of economy for the decreasing of CO2 emissions. I think that we have to explore more this capacity to increase captation of CO2 by reconquest of biodiversity. I'm sorry, I have another meeting in parallel. I have to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
No worries. And okay, now is probably the right time to move to our next speaker, Clifford Galea, President of the Tramuntana region in Malta, politician from the CEMR platform of young elected politicians. Clifford, please, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity as well. It shows also that local authorities like local councils, municipalities and regions like the one I run in Malta are very important as regards to this action in favor of climate change. And as you mentioned, it's not only just the degrees, it has to start from us. As I said even in a previous meeting today, it has to be us directly, even if in a simple thing, like for example awareness, the way we even correct each other when the time needs to be for someone to be corrected. For example, we're living in 2022 and we still see people throwing rubbish out. We are in Egypt where COP27 is happening, and you go to the local shops and plastic is like the air. It's like they give it, I pretend that the government worked for it, at least, especially in the COP week. There should be much more awareness. Gender equality, we are in Egypt again. And what about gender equality? What about the human rights? What about LGBTIQ rights, for example? And all this is linked to the climate change. Maybe one thinks, what is the connotation? But yes, of course, we talked even about the women empowerment, that we need to empower the people, such as women, gender differences in order to work better for a climate change, which after all affects us. A happy person makes a happy job and makes a happy effort, and at the end of the day, the results are there. It's like when you are in a job and your boss treats you well and you do more. It's the same for the country, because at the end of the day, each individual, what matters most for him is the health, the good education, a good job, and money in the pockets. And we can come here for COP27 discussing and talking and projecting and giving ideas, but at the end of the day, if the general public doesn't understand what our message is, how can we make this big wave of change all over the world for a better future? I come from Malta, as you know. It's a very small country. We have like 400,000 people. But I'm happy to say that the government, together with the people, is making it also its part. Of course, not everyone understands what climate change is. They see them as government propaganda. I emphasize, even when I do something on my social media, I try to explain the people's language. What is it about? What is happening? What will happen to our kids and the future? What is the... we used to see, for example, movies like 2012, End of the World, and it used to scare us. But at the end of the day, we're like experiencing some of these effects. For example, in Malta, the highest temperature in summer used to be 35. Now it's 42. It's desert in this island in 42. In winter, we used to go to Italy to see snow. In January, we have sleet, and sometimes even like a hint of snow in an island, can you imagine? And people start to talk. They need to experience to talk and to realize what is happening as regards climate change. And now we take the opportunity. When we see those actions happening, we should take the opportunity. This is climate change. This is what we talk about. This is when we say we want to be a carbon neutral country. And this is when we say that we want to promote electric cars and the public transport. Again, I thank the Maltese government. Now it made the public transport free for all. Free for all as from the 1st of October of 2022. And so we saw an increase in the use of public transport by people. Of course, then we have to help as regards the change of mentality. We have the idea, maybe because we are small and we want to look like the big states, it is a status in Malta to have a car. Even from in the same village, to go from your house to the main square, they want to go with the car to show that they have a new car. Again, here I can criticize a bit our local authorities in Malta. Maybe we started late to speak about the change needed in order for a better environment. We started to introduce the bike lanes now, thankfully. We also have a ministry dedicated on climate change, especially also as regards to water, electricity. The government also helped to keep the bills low. And the people realize that, of course, climate change can touch your pockets at the end of the day. And again, we should take these opportunities when the people are touched to make the changes needed, especially in the way we envisage our lifestyles. As I always love to mention, the youths are not victims of climate change. We are the trailblazers, we are the problem solvers, and when opportunity is given to us, we can work hard, we can make an effort, and even instill good ideas in the minds of the older politicians maybe, and so in a higher level, change is needed. For example, I mentioned also a small example in Malta. It was introduced, a Seed Green program. What is this? It's an initiative that provides young and aspiring entrepreneurs the opportunity to acquire knowledge, skill sets, and tools to develop an initial green and sustainable idea into a viable startup venture. So we don't have that much of an excuse anymore that nothing is being done. The thing is how to talk, how to express ourselves, what to tweet, what to write. Our language is important. I criticize a lot this thing, and I've been saying this all the week during my stay here at COP. The way we talk is very important, because some of the people like say, those are buzzwords, we hear them a lot, climate change, COP, what is it? Okay, change, you know? We need to make them understand that it is the high temperature in summer, it's the rain floods in January, February, March in Malta, it's the thunderstorms that we're experiencing and never happened before. It's also the effects of the human conflicts, like we see as in the wars of Russia and Ukraine, that will affect what will happen in the future, because we talked also about it. Now we have to fork out money to rebuild again a country. And this money could have been used for a better work, for a better future as regards to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clifford. What an inspiration. Yes, absolutely right. It's, I heard a Washington State governor who has just been re-elected say, we used to have to show a graph when we talked about climate change. Now we show pictures of forest fires in California. And he said, you can win elections in the United States on renewable energy now, which I thought was really interesting. But thank you very much. Our next speaker is L.Takeh Ajakaiye, who is Executive Director of Ampak. Kemi, thank you so much for joining us, and really interested to hear your thoughts from a Nigerian perspective. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think firstly I'll say so when I speak, you have to understand I'm speaking from the perspective of a developing country and the least developed countries. I say so because of the question my dear friend and colleague Harry, put to Professor Ali. Right. The challenges and opportunities on green skills provision and development in Nigeria and, of course, in Africa widely. The discussion is warranted. And many thanks, Sarah and the AIMA team for, giving us this platform to speak as regards this topic. Next slide, please. So you see, in my research, I tried to look at the various definitions of skills, green skills. What is it really? But the definition you see from OECD 2018 does strike a chord for me, because it speaks to Nigeria and to West Africa. The adaptation to goods, to products, to services. The future of work is changing. And so you will ask, in Nigeria, which is my country, where I live, what is it going to be like in the next coming years? It's difficult to tell. And you ask again, is gown going to meet town? And so I will speak from the perspective of education, the labor force, the economic sector, and gender. Next slide, please. So if you look at the charts up, it's a reflection of Nigeria and then Africa at large in terms of education. And for those of you that are familiar with that terrain, you will realize that green skills, green environment is not our cup of tea for now. It would be eventually. So when you speak of environment and green skills, off the top of your head, you'll be thinking the best form to campaign or advocate for such is building a green team. And so the first set of people you are going to run to is those that are studying environmental sciences. But the chart up here shows that in 2018-2019, as a reference point now, of the 1.8 million students in the tertiary institution, just 2.49% undergraduate level now study environmental sciences. And you move to the postgraduate, there's a decline. It's just 1.49%. And then you get to the PhD level, 0.4%. Study environmental sciences. And so, for industry captains, for business leaders, we look towards this direction to build a green team. But it's actually paucity of education in that course of study. Next slide, please. And so again, when you look at the changing labor force, because the demography is changing in Nigeria, and of course, like I mentioned as part of my takeaway, is Africa has this strong entrepreneurship, vibrant, venturesome, young population. When you look at the Generation Z, that's the labor force, and that's the future for green skills. But again, you see that when you look at in terms of labor force per location in Nigeria, we have more in the rural area than in the urban area. And so I'm sure Leila is taking some, because they have developed toolkits. Again, you see that by economic sector, 53% is in the service sector. And I want to tell you that out of this 53% that are employed in the economic sector, 60% of those are daily income earners. And then, how do you begin to advocate green skills to a daily income earner, which is the larger chunk? It's food for thought. But that's our reality. But I will use what Marianne used. There's overload of opportunities. Next slide, please. So, when you look, I've spoken about the education. In terms of hiring, HR personnel, CEOs, those in the C-suites, MDs, board of directors, you'll be thinking towards your skate for hiring, and that's the skill, knowledge, attitude, training, and experience. And so there's a dilemma to say, well, due to the current socioeconomic situation, you look at the personal analysis. Job retention is difficult now, even in Nigeria. So why do we want to invest in reskilling? Why do we need to upskill? Right? Again, another food for thought. I'm being timed here, so I have 2 minutes left. But next slide, please. The caps is what I've put here. The multinationals drive policy, drive upskilling, drive, reskilling. Can the multinationals also what? Help drive the micro, small, medium enterprises towards green skills? Can COP help us drive, like I mentioned, SDG 8 and 9, to push towards what? Implementation of those. Next slide, please. What I said, there's overload of opportunities. Systems thinking, talent managers and industries, industry captains, there's a lot to begin to sit down to look at. AIMA, this is an opportunity for AIMA. And so I put what you see in this ball here are various terminologies, concepts that have evolved from sustainability, ESG, CSR, and all the likes. And all of this relates to green skills. So therefore, the conversation is even yet to begin. It's a starting point. And with this, I'll say thank you very much for listening.
Kemi, thank you very much indeed. Really thought-provoking point of view. Thank you. Fabrizio.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ms. Ajakaiye. Let's move to the next speaker then. Next on my list is Vincent Chauvet, Mayor of Overtone, France. and coming to the region rapporteur on COP 27 or 26 maybe. 26 and 37, great. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I already said in the introduction the main points that we see as mayors. The European Committee of the Regions is the political assembly of mayors, president of regions, and councillors of all the European Union. I'm myself a mayor in a 15,000 inhabitant city in France. And it's true that we have a lot in common in Europe, but also with other parts of the world regarding capacity building, which is an issue that is really important. But to also elaborate on the role of local and regional authorities in defining local and regional climate policies, we think, and at this COP we tried to make our points heard, especially this morning at the Surge ministerial meeting, that today where ambition at the national and thus at the international level is lacking, where negotiations are going too slow, where we continue to emit CO2, the real ambition, the real implementation, and the real solutions lies at the local and regional level. And we are not only non-state actors or non-party stakeholders or non-market approach, we're also a positive thing and something local and regional authorities that can bring the way forward, especially in education and continuous education, since it's many times something that is done at the local level. My city, Autun, is engaged into a United Nations label, which is called Ville Apprenante, Learning Cities. It's a global network, including in France the city, for instance, of Clermont-Ferrand, where we try to make coherent education throughout the life, and also continuous education, and also professional education. Also because we know that today what we learn, or what we have learned, even our generation, it was really well illustrated in the Nigerian example, is not necessarily suited to the challenges we have ahead. And also the climate policies are moving so fast that we have to reskill and reskill and reskill and upskill and retroskill and reskill a lot of the population. So this is a continuous process where local and regional governments have to have their place. My last point being that it's not always easy. Sometimes you have islands, sometimes you have rural areas, sometimes you have very small cities that do not necessarily have the engineering capacities, the university, the schools, the knowledge to bring forward this capacity building to the population. But still, it's since we talk a lot, and it has been said also about social justice, capacity building and improving skills can have instrumental effects on minorities, on women, on discriminated people that are sometimes left behind in traditional capacity building, and where we should try to keep in mind at the local level that we can make the change not only for the environment, but also for these social groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to our final speaker, who has been waiting very patiently and has given us the headline, in fact, Inspiration Overload for today, Marion Overtone, who is the CEMR spokesperson on environment and a Lincolnshire County Council councillor, God's own country, eh, Marianne?
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very pleased to see you here, managing a long day. Thank you very much for taking the interest. That's terrific. I have two talks, so I'm going to have to work between them a bit because I want to give a bit more about the skills that we've been talking about, because we have done a lot on that. So firstly, I started life as a scientist, and we were researching climate change, crawling under the ice, making measurements, and that was some 30 years ago that we first did that. So we knew about climate change then, and we know about it now. So it is well past time for us to really make the effort to actually reach those targets that we have to get to. So how do we do it? One thing about capacity is money. And today is the day that the budget has been announced for local government in England. And we have found that our negotiations and battles have brought some fruit, and we have some further funding, but we are also going to be required to raise tax. So we're still going to be in a situation where we hope our foundation services are covered, and then we can think about, and what else can we do? One of the difficulties of really close funding, really tight funding, is of course you have little capacity to make decisions on doing what you really want to do. We are starting from a low base. We've had COVID, we've had, and we do have the war, sadly. Yet, what we have to do is make it so that the green economy, the green skills that we're developing, will actually be our way forward, that will help all of our issues together. So with CEMR, we have been working on the Green Deal, trying to get legislation that is flexible and therefore useful for councils. We've also been looking in UK at trying to get legislation sorted. We have found that all of the skills, little pockets of money, were spread around 800 different organizations. How can that be efficient use of resources? So we're calling for that to be much more umbrellaed under local governments. We think that with the green economy, we've done our calculations, we've done our sums. We think we can raise 700,000 jobs by 2030, raise to over 1 million by 2050. There is work to be done. We have very little unemployment currently. In my area, it's 2.5% unemployment, which is really just a turnover. And yet, we need more skills. So there is going to be a pressure for migration as well. And we have currently, as you know, we have a considerable number of people coming forward, coming through into UK. And we have an increasing number of people living in urban areas. In UK, 90% live within areas that would be affected by severe weather. So it's 200 million people are at risk. And it's councils, the local authorities, that are in the front line, that people look to, they trust. They want to see local authorities at the heart of getting good solutions. So one of the things we've done is to use our powers in a partnership arrangement. So for example, working with the university in Lincoln, we were able to set up a new engineering unit in the university to provide skills for the local big business, which if we got is Siemens, which employs 800 engineers making wind turbines. So to serve that business, we improved the university facilities, and therefore we're able to get those skills in place. In the councils, we have apprentices, and the government has set up an arrangement where you more or less have spent 2% of your income, and you might as well have the apprentices, that you kind of paid for them in advance, effectively. But the apprenticeship scheme has been successful, and it's meant that we've had a lot more people coming in to our councils and other authorities also, and indeed business, to learn on the job. The government has given us an incentive to do that, and that's been effective. One other thing that I think is really important is procurement. So we've worked to improve our procurement so that we can work together. So, for example, when I asked my council how many of the 3,800 council houses were we insulating that year, they said 6 were being retrofitted. But actually now we have plans to do 800 in the next few years. And we're doing this by, yes, putting some money of our own aside, absolutely. We've put £1 million towards green initiatives, but also by drawing in partnership funding, working together with other councils to jointly procure so that we're not wasting our time on bids that fail. We're working together to utilize our resources to make successful bids, so we shall be doing on a much greater scale. So I think, in conclusion, to say that there is such a huge challenge that we are facing with climate change. We are talking about people's lives, livelihoods, and we will be making that change, but we will be needing to make it together and with the right resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Shall we move to the Q&A? Is there any question from our audience? Yes, please. We have the lady on the back.
Thank you very much for the last presentation, Ma. So I just want to ask a question. My name is Madami Rebecca from Nigeria. So I just want to ask a question about the last point you spoke about, how you're improving procurement and also drawing partnership to utilize the resources in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you. I think with the procurement, a couple of things are really important. We try to make sure that we procure locally. We don't necessarily want to just spend all the money abroad. You know, we want to support our local economy. So we've broken down a lot of the contracts into small parts. But also, so even when we join together with a bid to get the funding in, so we work big scale to get the money in. And then when we're spending it, we want to spend it small scale, locally. And that's a good approach. The government needs to make sure that the money is consistent over time. One of the problems can be if there's a grant that you've got to apply for by next month and it'll run out, it's got to be spent in 6 months more. It's very difficult because part of procurement is building up the industry. You can't just walk into the street and say, I want 800 houses retrofitted this month. You know, you have to build the local industry. So by buying here and buying there until you've got enough people that are actually working in the industry, trained and supported to actually come and do the work. We are short of people to employ. Short of skilled people, short of skills, short of people. We need to make sure that we have to build that up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I think there is one more question. Our friend, the gentleman sitting here on the first row.
Thank you very much. My name is Rehan from Pakistan. So I'm very happy to listen to the last presentation. So two of my point. One is when we're talking about some capacity building of the green skills. So partnership is very much important. So from the UK side, I belong to a UK charity that is Muslim Hands. I'm working in Pakistan. So for this climatic crisis, which we had in Pakistan, 33.3 million people, directly affected. And 1 million people have no home for this winter season. So there is no climatic funding for that, only just one organization, that is Schneider France. So we have one skill-based program for these flood-affected peoples. So I'm listening you all. I'm also doing PhD in from Islamic International University, Islamabad, and my topic is environmental governance. But my question is that where is the partnership and where is inclusiveness from your system for the developing nations like Pakistan, which is your attentions, which needs your attention at most?
It's a very pertinent question. We've heard lots over the last 2 weeks about the reality is this change has already happened and happening and continuing to happen. The UK, I can't speak on behalf of the UK, obviously we had our Prime Minister here recommitting to green growth and investing in all sorts of different initiatives, and there's been ministers and different representatives across the COP talking about how we're partnering with private sectors and other economies to share knowledge, have funds exchanging across nations. Beyond that, I agree. I think there's probably more collaboration that could be talked about.
Do you wish, Vincent, you wish to complement this answer?
Yes, to answer on a personal position, it's also the position of liberal mayors of the European Union, including Bart Somers, who was president of the European Liberal Association, is now minister in Belgium for integration and immigration. You were saying you have 1 million people without homes in Pakistan, and in my city I destroy 100 homes per year because the population is decreasing. So at some point, and as introduction, I don't find anyone. Now I'm recruiting 2 people to make security in front of the schools for people to cross when school begins or finish. I find no one, and so the children and the pupils, they cross without security. So at some point, I don't want to say that the solution is for people to leave their homes, family and culture, but at some point we have a continent in Europe and some part of Europe where population is decreasing. The young population is decreasing. We don't find enough people for any of the primary public services, and of course not for green solution and green technologies. But still we have an education system that has a lot of potential. We're going to lose over the next 5 years 500,000 children in schools. 500,000. I think part of the solution is probably through money and through a cooperation from city to city or state to state, or through a fund with a lot of billions of dollars for loss and damages and whatever the discussion is. But also the reality at the local level, from mayor to mayors, from community to community, is that in some part of the world we're losing population and we're destroying homes, while in other part of the world people don't have a roof over their head. So it's a reflection, and in the liberal mayor's family, which is the centrist family, we are open to have programs to have regulated but strong immigration to Europe, because it's one of the solutions to the global challenges that we face, both of us.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So this is the end. I think it's really time to close this debate. I would like to ask Sarah to wrap up this session, but probably before giving you the floor, I'd like myself to 3 reflections very quickly on 3 elements. Probably I'm missing. I think these are 3 missed elements if you want really to complete this debate. I think we can, of course, discuss about reskilling, upskilling, and new skilling. Yet, a good part of the discussion should really be around how to create jobs, because indeed there is a gap in the market. Of course, a mismatch between the demand and the offer due to the missing technical skills on the people side, yet there is also a mismatch in terms of expectations. We see that many people, more and more, they leave the job just because this is not what they are looking for. They don't feel happy, they don't feel satisfied with the job they find. This is the first point. There was another element around finance and investing, and this, of course, is always the elephant here at COP. When it comes to investing, I think that we never really speak about how to socialize the outcomes of those investments that we make in companies out there. You know, investing is huge, and public authorities, they are, you know, very committed to this, yet they do touch very little on the return of those investments, and this is a clear issue. And also, this brings me to the further element, to the third one, which is about communication. We are really very quick in criticizing public authorities when those investments go wrong, and very slow to give them an applause when they are making those good investments. So I think that we should also come up with a new narrative on this.
Thanks so much, Fabrizio, and I know we're over time, so I'll be really, really quick. So I think we come back to where we started, which was green skills and education and training. I think the points that speakers have made about the fact that we can use this to fill gaps where we have them at the moment and we need to fill, that we can rebuild economies being respectful of gender differences and respectful also of minority communities and support them in a way that currently we don't, that we can engage with communities, as Professor Hassan said, and that we can use money for loss and damage. We've talked a lot about loss and damage, and rich countries have talked a lot about how they are worried about handing money over to the global south and developing countries. But the ability to use that money to build a better world and to build skills that we all need and which we're in desperately short supply of, and if there were more of them, then there wouldn't be the poaching and the skills shortage that we have at the moment. To be able to do that, it's not rocket science. You know, there's a lot of big problems, but that isn't one of them. Giving money to people to educate themselves and provide a better life is not exactly difficult to do. So I've been really inspired. I have inspiration overload now at the end of this session with the passion and the expertise of our speakers. I'd like to thank them hugely for spending time in their busy schedules with us, and thank Fabrizio and our great cooperation. I hope it's one of many with CEMR. Thank you very much indeed, and goodbye everyone around the world and in the audience. Bye-bye.